This guy says he was calling his wife to see what she wanted for dinner when the person on the other end wasn't what he expected. I called my wife to ask what she wanted from a Chinese place, and a child answered her phone. That's how I discovered my wife's 9-month affair. It was an evening in October, around 6:30. The autumn rain was tapping against the windows of our home, creating a melancholic rhythm that seemed to underscore the mundane nature of my evening. I had been working from home, buried in spreadsheets and inventory reports for the warehouse where I manage shipping operations. The fluorescent light of my computer screen was the only illumination in the dimly lit study, casting long shadows across the room. My desk was cluttered with papers, coffee cups from throughout the day, and the remnants of a hastily eaten sandwich from lunch. The warehouse had been experiencing some issues with delayed shipments, and I'd spend the better part of the afternoon on conference calls with suppliers and transportation companies trying to sort out the mess. The stress of it all had left me drained, but I still had several more hours of work ahead of me to compile the reports my regional manager needed by morning. Bridget was supposedly at her volunteer shift at the animal shelter, the one she never missed. 3 evenings a week, from 6 o'clock to 8:30, like clockwork. Sometimes she'd add weekend afternoons for adoption events, her face lighting up whenever she talked about the dogs and cats she was helping. She'd come home with stories about puppies finding their forever homes, about senior dogs getting a second chance at happiness. I admired her dedication, her compassion for these animals who had no voice of their own. She'd started volunteering about 9 months ago, shortly after her younger sister Paris had adopted a rescue dog. Bridget had gone with her to the shelter, and came home talking about how rewarding the experience had been, how she felt called to help. Within a week, she'd signed up for regular shifts. I'd encouraged her, thinking it was healthy for her to have something of her own, something outside of her marketing job and our marriage. I'd even joked that maybe we'd end up adopting a dog ourselves someday. I had been so focused on my work that I hadn't realized how hungry I'd become. My stomach growled, reminding me that I'd skipped lunch again. The sandwich I'd mentioned earlier had been nothing more than a few bites grabbed between phone calls. I decided to order takeout from our favorite Chinese restaurant, the small family-owned place on Maple Street that made the best sesame chicken in town. Bridget usually loved their sesame chicken, though sometimes she was in the mood for lo mein instead. The portions were generous, and we'd often have leftovers for lunch the next day. The restaurant had become one of our regular spots over the years. We discovered it on a rainy night much like this one about 3 years ago when our original dinner plans had fallen through. The elderly couple who owned it, Mr. and Mrs. Wong, always greeted us warmly, remembering our usual orders. It was one of those comfortable routines that married couples build over time, the small rituals that make a shared life feel stable and predictable. I figured I'd call Bridget and ask what she wanted when she got home. It seemed like a thoughtful gesture, a small way to show I was thinking about her even while she was out doing her volunteer work. I picked up my phone and dialed her number, expecting to hear her voice, maybe with the sound of barking dogs in the background or the cheerful chatter of other volunteers. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone picked up. Hello. My heart skipped a beat. It was a child's voice, a young boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, speaking with that innocent, unguarded tone that children have before they learn to filter their words. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second, checking the number. It was definitely Bridget's. I must have misdialed somehow, I thought, even though I'd simply pressed her name in my contacts. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she was babysitting for someone, but she'd never mentioned that. Maybe she'd left her phone somewhere, and a random child had found it. Sorry, I think I have the wrong number, I said, already moving to hang up. No, wait, the child's voice called out urgently. Is this my friend's phone? Friend. That's what he called her. Not my mom's friend or a lady's phone. Just my friend. The way he said it was so casual, so familiar, like he knew her well. My mind started racing. Something felt off about this entire situation. Whose phone is this? I asked, try to keep my voice steady, casual, not wanting to alarm the child. My daddy's friend, the boy said matter-of-factly. She's at our house. She left her phone on the couch when she went upstairs with Daddy. The words hit me like a physical blow. Went upstairs with Daddy. The innocent way he said it, without any understanding of what it might mean, made it somehow worse. I felt my hand start to shake slightly, the phone suddenly feeling heavier in my grip. The spreadsheet on my computer screen blurred as I tried to process what I was hearing. Where's your house? I asked, my throat tightening. The big white one with the pool, he said proudly. Daddy owns the car dealerships. He has the commercials on TV. Do you know them? The ones where he rides an elephant. That was so cool. I got to meet the elephant when they filmed it. I knew exactly who that was. Sebastian's commercials ran constantly on local television. Sebastian's Auto Empire, where every customer is royalty. His face was plastered on billboards all over town. Recently divorced, big scandal in the community about a year ago. His wife had left him, and the rumors had swirled for months about the reasons why. Some said he'd been unfaithful, others claimed she'd found someone else. The truth had never been entirely clear, lost in the gossip and speculation that small towns thrive on. I remembered the divorce had been particularly nasty. There had been articles in the local newspaper about the custody battle, about the division of assets. Sebastian had kept the dealerships and the house, while his ex-wife had moved to another state. The whole thing had played out very publicly, which wasn't surprising given Sebastian's local celebrity status. "Why is she at your house?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Part of me had known for a while, I realized, without wanting to admit to myself. "She comes over for meetings with Daddy a couple of times a week," the boy explained with the straightforward honesty of a child who doesn't yet understand secrets. "Sometimes on weekends when I'm at baseball practice. They have important grown-up meetings. A couple of times a week. When my wife had her volunteer shift, the pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, sometimes Saturday afternoons, those were Bridget's regular volunteer times. The same schedule, week after week, for 9 months. What kind of meetings?" I pressed, knowing I was asking a child to explain things he couldn't possibly understand, but unable to stop myself. "Daddy says they're grown-up meetings about important stuff," the boy recited, clearly repeating words he'd heard before. "They usually go up to his office upstairs. Sometimes they watch movies up there. Daddy has a really big TV in his office. Like really, really big. Bigger than the one we have in the living room. He says it's for work, but sometimes I wish I could watch cartoons on it." Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. Movies in his upstairs office. Behind a closed door. While this innocent child played downstairs, unaware that his father was destroying another family. The mental image was vivid and nauseating. My wife in another man's home, in his bedroom or office, or wherever they were having their meetings, while I sat at home working, completely oblivious. "Is your mom there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the news about Sebastian's divorce. "Mommy doesn't live here anymore," the boy said, and I could hear a trace of sadness in his young voice. "She moved out last year. It's just me and Daddy now. Sometimes I miss her, but Daddy says we're doing fine on our own. He says she's happier where she is, and that's what matters." Do you think that's true? That people can be happier living in different houses? The question caught me off guard. This child was grappling with the aftermath of his parents' divorce, trying to make sense of why his family had fallen apart. And now he was unknowingly helping to destroy mine. The casual way he accepted this broken family situation made my chest ache. This child had already experienced one family falling apart, and now he was an unwitting participant in the destruction of mine. I wondered if his mother knew what was happening in the house she'd left behind, if she knew her ex-husband was carrying on with a married woman while their son played nearby. "How long has she been coming over?" I asked, gripping the edge of my desk. "Since summer started," he said thoughtfully. "Yeah, because she first came when school ended. I remember because it was right after my last day of kindergarten. She brought me a present, a toy truck from Daddy's dealership. It was red, my favorite color. She brings me cookies sometimes from that bakery place. The chocolate chip ones are my favorite. They're really good. Do you like chocolate chip cookies?" Since summer. That was 9 months ago. 9 months of lies, of elaborate deception, of my wife coming home and kissing me with the same mouth that had been kissing him. 9 months of her getting into our bed, sleeping beside me, making love to me, all while carrying on this secret life. The bakery he mentioned was near the gym where Bridget claimed to work out before her volunteer shift. Another piece of her carefully constructed alibi. She'd come home sometimes with a pink box, saying she'd grab treats for the shelter volunteers. I'd never questioned it, never thought to wonder why she needed to stop at a bakery on the way to clean kennels and walk dogs. Sometimes she'd bring the cookies home, saying the volunteers hadn't finished them all. I'd eaten them myself, never suspecting they were part of the props in her elaborate deception. "Can you take the phone to her?" I asked, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. She said not to bother them when the doors closed. The boy said apologetically, "Daddy gets really mad if I interrupt their meetings." One time I knocked because I was hungry and Daddy yelled. He said I need to learn to respect privacy. He felt bad after and made me pizza, but he said grown-ups need private time for their work. Is that true? Do grown-ups always need private time for work? Privacy. The word felt like acid in my mouth. They needed privacy for their meetings. Privacy to betray their spouses, to build their secret life while a child ate dinner alone downstairs. Privacy to do whatever they were doing behind that locked door, while this little boy convinced himself it was normal, that this was just how things were. "I bet the door was closed," I said more to myself than to the boy. "Yeah," he confirmed. "It always is. They lock it too." I tried the handle once because I wanted to ask if they wanted popcorn. I know how to make it in the microwave all by myself, but it was locked. Daddy said later that locks are important for privacy during business meetings. But I can tell her, "You called when they come down." They usually come down after a while. Sometimes an hour, sometimes more. "What's your name?" An hour. Sometimes more. I felt sick. The clinical nature of the child's description somehow made it worse. This wasn't a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. This was calculated routine, scheduled into both of their lives like any other appointment. "Never mind," I said quickly. "I'll talk to her later." "Okay," he said cheerfully. "Oh wait, I hear Daddy coming down the stairs now. Maybe they're done with their meeting. I'm going to ask if we can order pizza for dinner. Do you like pizza? My favorite is pepperoni." I heard footsteps in the background, heavy and quick. Then a man's voice, sharp with concern and anger. "What are you doing with that phone? Who are you talking to?" "Someone called your friend," the boy explained innocently. "He wanted to talk to her. I told him she was in a meeting with you upstairs." "Give me that. Now." There was a shuffling sound, what sounded like the phone being grabbed, then the line went dead. He'd hung up. Sebastian had hung up my wife's phone after his son had revealed everything. He knew exactly what had just happened, knew that someone on the other end of that call had just learned the truth. I wondered what he was thinking in that moment. Was he panicking? Angry at his son for answering the phone? Already planning his next move? I sat there in my study, staring at my phone as the screen went dark. The rain continued its steady drumbeat against the window. My Chinese food order was completely forgotten now, my appetite gone, replaced by a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. The spreadsheets on my computer screen seemed absurd now, meaningless numbers when my entire life had just been revealed as a lie. My wife wasn't at the animal shelter. She was at Sebastian's house in his bedroom behind a locked door while his young son played downstairs. She had been going there for 9 months, 3 evenings a week, sometimes weekend afternoons. The volunteer work was fake. The adoption events were fake. The puppies finding homes, the senior dogs getting second chances, all of it was just an elaborate cover story for her affair with the car dealership owner. I thought about all the times she'd come home late, apologizing with stories about difficult adoptions or sick animals that needed extra care. The time she said she'd stayed late because a dog had gotten loose and they'd spent hours searching the neighborhood. I remember that night vividly. She'd come home after 11, looking exhausted, her clothes dirty. She'd gone straight to the shower, saying she'd been crawling under bushes looking for the escaped dog. I'd made her tea, rubbed her shoulders, told her how proud I was of her dedication. The weekend she'd claimed they were hosting a special event for veterans looking to adopt service animals. She'd left early Saturday morning and hadn't returned until evening, full of stories about the veterans she'd met, the emotional connections between wounded soldiers and rescue dogs. I'd listened to every word, moved by her compassion. It had all been lies. Every single story, carefully crafted, delivered with just the right amount of detail to be believable. She was good at it, I realized. Really good. The lies came so naturally to her, so smoothly, that I'd never suspected a thing. I thought about how she'd seemed so passionate about the work, how she'd shown me photos on her phone of dogs and cats. Where had those photos come from? Had she stolen them from the shelter's website? Had she taken them during some brief, legitimate visit to establish her cover story? Or had she found them on random internet sites, generic stock photos of shelter animals that could be from anywhere? The clock on my computer screen showed 9:45 when I heard the garage door open. My whole body tensed. She was home. I hadn't moved from my desk in the 3 hours since that phone call. I just sat there, staring at nothing, my mind spinning through memories, re-examining every detail of the past 9 months through this new, horrible lens. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, the familiar sound of her keys being dropped in the bowl by the door, the rustle of her coat being hung up. Then she appeared in the doorway of my study, and I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in what felt like months. "Sorry I'm late," she said, slightly breathless. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair a bit disheveled. She was wearing the navy blue volunteer shirt, the one with the fake shelter logo. There was an emergency with one of the new intakes. Poor thing was so scared, wouldn't let anyone near him. Took us forever to get him settled. Another lie, delivered with perfect timing and emotion. I could see it now, the performance of it. The breathlessness, the flushed cheeks, they weren't from dealing with scared dogs. They were from whatever she'd been doing with Sebastian for the past 3 hours. I just shook my head, unable to speak yet. I noticed her shirt wasn't tucked in quite right on one side, the collar slightly askew. There was a faint smell of cologne on her, expensive cologne, not the cheap body spray I wore. Sebastian's cologne, lingering on her clothes, her skin. How was the shelter? I asked, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "Great," she said with enthusiasm that now seemed grotesque and theatrical. "We're getting ready for a big adoption event this weekend. You should come see the puppies. There's this one golden retriever mix who's just adorable. I think you'd really love him. He's got these big brown eyes and the sweetest temperament. The shelter director thinks he'll get adopted immediately." More lies, flowing so easily from her lips. The detail about the golden retriever was a nice touch, specific enough to seem real, appealing enough to distract me from asking too many questions. Did she even remember which lies she told me? Did she keep track, or had deception become so natural that she didn't need to anymore? "Maybe I will," I said carefully, watching her face for any sign that she suspected something was wrong. She smiled, that same smile I'd fallen in love with years ago, and kissed me on the forehead before heading to the bedroom to change. Her lips were warm against my skin, and I had to fight the urge to pull away. The same routine, as always, the same domestic ritual we'd performed countless times. Except now I knew the truth. Now I knew that kiss was a lie, that smile was a mask, that the woman I thought I knew was a stranger. I sat there on my office chair, my untouched work still glowing on the computer screen. 9 months of lies. 9 months of fake stories about rescue dogs and adoption events and sick animals. And I had only discovered it because an innocent kid answered her phone, a kid who had no idea he'd just exposed my wife's affair, no idea he'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of my marriage. Of course, he didn't understand. How could he? He was just a child, living his own complicated reality of a broken home, trying to make sense of why his daddy had meetings with a woman who brought him cookies. I heard the shower turn on in our bedroom. She was washing off the evidence of her evening with him, just like she had been doing for months, standing under our shower, using our soap, our towels, erasing the traces of her betrayal before climbing into our bed. But this time was different. This time I knew exactly what she was washing away, and she had no idea that I knew. I sat in the darkness of my study long after the shower stopped, long after I heard her get into bed. The house was quiet except for the rain, which had settled into a steady rhythm. I sat there thinking about what to do next, about how to handle this, about whether I should confront her immediately or wait. Part of me wanted to storm into the bedroom and demand the truth, to watch her face as she tried to explain the unexplainable. But another part of me, the part that was already thinking strategically, already protecting myself, knew that I needed to be smart about this. In our state, adultery affected divorce settlements. If I could prove her affair, she wouldn't be entitled to alimony. But I needed evidence, real evidence, not just a phone call with a child. I needed photographs, documentation, something that would hold up if this went to court. And I needed to secure my assets, make sure she couldn't drain our accounts or claim more than she was entitled to. Most men would crash out if they knew their wife was cheating. They wouldn't be able to channel their emotions into something positive and strategic. If you let your emotions get the best of you, you're going to make a mistake and possibly end up in trouble. I knew I needed to channel my emotions, as impossible as that seemed in the moment. I needed to be cold, calculated, methodical. I needed to think like she'd been thinking, planning ahead, covering my bases, staying one step ahead. The next morning, she made breakfast like nothing had happened. I watched her move around our kitchen, flipping pancakes, pouring coffee, humming softly to herself. She was wearing one of my old college t-shirts and pajama shorts, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked so normal, so domestic, so much like the woman I'd married. How could she be so calm? How could she look me in the eye and smile after what she'd done last night? After what she'd been doing for 9 months? "You're up early," she said, setting a plate in front of me with a stack of perfectly golden pancakes. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. That was the truth. I'd been awake all night, lying next to her in our bed, listening to her peaceful breathing, thinking about that phone call, about that little boy's voice telling me my wife was upstairs with his daddy. Thinking about all the nights she'd slept peacefully beside me, unburdened by guilt, while I worked late or worried about bills or planned our future together. She sat across from me at our kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, probably texting him, making plans for their next meeting. The casual intimacy of the moment, the two of us having breakfast together like we had thousands of times before, felt surreal and sickening. Every gesture, every smile, every casual touch now seemed like part of the performance. "I might stop by the shelter this weekend," I said, carefully watching her face, "to see those puppies you mentioned." Her hand froze for just a second, her thumb hovering over her phone screen. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. A tiny crack in the facade. Then she recovered, looking up at me with what seemed like genuine pleasure. "Oh, that's sweet of you, honey. But they're actually not doing visits this weekend." She set her phone down, giving me her full attention now. "Some kind of deep cleaning, or something. Health department regulations. They have to do it every few months, and they can't have visitors when they're using the heavy-duty cleaning chemicals. It's really unfortunate timing." Another lie, delivered so smoothly. She just told me last night to come see the puppies this weekend, and now she was backtracking, building another layer of deception to prevent me from discovering her fraud. The detail about health department regulations was good, official-sounding, reasonable, hard to verify. She'd thought it through in those few seconds, constructed a plausible excuse on the fly. "That's too bad," I said, taking a bite of pancake I couldn't taste. "Maybe next weekend." "Definitely," she said, smiling warmly. "I'll let you know when they're doing the next adoption event. You'd really enjoy it. It's so rewarding to see the animals find homes." I wanted to scream at her, to throw the truth in her face, to watch her scramble for explanations. But I stayed calm, nodded, finished my breakfast while she chattered about her day ahead, about a presentation she had at work, about needing to pick up dry cleaning. The banality of it all was almost worse than the lies. After she left for work, her real job at the marketing firm downtown, I called in sick to my own job. I told my supervisor I had a family crisis at home, which was true, though not in the way he probably imagined. He was understanding, told me to take whatever time I needed, said the inventory reports could wait another day. Then I got in my car and drove to the animal shelter where my wife supposedly volunteered. The drive took about 20 minutes, through the familiar streets of our town, past the coffee shop where we sometimes had breakfast on Sundays, past the park where we'd had our first date years ago. Everything looked the same, but felt different now, like I was seeing the world through a warped lens. The parking lot was half full, even on a weekday morning. People were coming and going with dogs on leashes, carrying pet carriers, going about the legitimate business of caring for animals in need. The sight of it made me angry. All these people actually doing the work my wife had been pretending to do for months. Real volunteers, giving their real time, while she used their genuine compassion as a cover for betrayal. I walked inside, and the smell of disinfectant and dog food hit me immediately. It was clean but institutional, with tile floors and fluorescent lighting. The walls were decorated with photos of adopted animals, success stories, before and after pictures. There was a bulletin board covered with flyers about upcoming events, about animals needing homes, about volunteer opportunities. A young woman sat at the front desk, probably in her early 20s, with kind eyes and a name tag that read Chelsea. She had blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail and wore the same type of navy blue polo shirt that Bridget had in her closet. Except this one was real, issued by an actual shelter to an actual volunteer. "Can I help you?" she asked with a genuine smile. "I'm interested in volunteering," I said, the lie coming easier than I expected. "My wife volunteers here, and loves it. She's always talking about the amazing work you do, how rewarding it is. I thought maybe I could join her, make it something we do together." "Oh, wonderful," Chelsea said enthusiastically. "We can always use more help, especially with couples. It's great when families volunteer together. What's her name? Maybe I know her. We're a pretty tight-knit group here." I told her Bridget's full name, watching Chelsea's face carefully, looking for any sign of recognition. She frowned, her fingers moving across her computer keyboard, clicking through what must have been their volunteer database. Let me check our system. We keep detailed records of all our volunteers for insurance purposes and scheduling. Every volunteer has to go through an orientation and background check, and we track all their hours for our annual reports. I waited, my heart pounding despite knowing what she was about to say. There was still some small, desperate part of me that hoped I was wrong, that there was some explanation for all of this. I don't see anyone by that name in our system, Chelsea said, looking genuinely confused. She turned her monitor slightly so I could see a database with rows of names, none of them Bridget's. When did she start volunteering here? About 9 months ago, I said, my mouth dry. She comes 3 evenings a week, Tuesday and Thursday nights, sometimes Saturday afternoons. She talks about it all the time, specific dogs, other volunteers, adoption events. Chelsea shook her head slowly, sympathy growing in her expression as she began to understand something was wrong. I've been working here for 2 years, and I coordinate all our volunteers. I know every single one of them. We have maybe 20 regular volunteers total, and I don't recognize that name at all. Are you absolutely sure it's this location? There's another shelter over in Riverside County, about 30 miles away. Maybe she volunteers there. But I was sure. This was the only animal shelter within a 20-mile radius of our home, and Bridget had specifically mentioned this one by name multiple times. She'd even pointed it out when we drove past it together, saying things like, that's where I volunteer, or I should stop in and check on the puppies. She'd been so specific, so detailed, that I'd never had any reason to doubt her. Maybe I misunderstood, I said, backing toward the door, suddenly needing to get out of there, away from Chelsea's sympathetic eyes. Wait, Chelsea called after me, standing up from her desk. If you're interested in volunteering, I can give you an application. We really do need the help, especially with the upcoming kitten season. Or if you want to talk about what you just discovered, I've seen this before. People using volunteering as a cover for other things. I'm sorry you're going through this. Her kindness almost broke me. I'll think about it, I managed to say, and left quickly before I said something I'd regret. I sat in my car in the parking lot, my hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the cheerful mural of dogs and cats painted on the shelter's exterior wall. 9 months of lies. 3 nights a week, sometimes weekends, all of it fake. Every single story she'd told me, every detail about the dogs and cats and adoptions, all manufactured, all part of an elaborate deception that had been going on right under my nose. I thought about that little boy again, Sebastian's son. 4 or 5 years old, he'd said his daddy owned car dealerships. There were only 2 major dealership owners in our town. One was Harold Pemberton, in his 70s, married to the same woman for 40 years, a pillar of the community who sponsored Little League teams and donated to charity. The other was Sebastian, mid-40s, recently divorced in a scandal that had kept the local gossip mills running for months. The choice was obvious. I pulled out my phone and Googled Sebastian's name. Images filled my screen. Professionally shot photos from his commercials, candid shots from charity events and local business functions, older family photos from before his divorce. In the family pictures, I could see his ex-wife, an attractive blonde woman who looked tired even in photos meant to project happiness, and a young boy who would be about the right age now. The boy was smiling in some photos, serious in others, always impeccably dressed in the way wealthy parents dress their children. The more recent photos showed Sebastian alone, or with his cars, always with that salesman smile, that carefully groomed appearance. He looked like someone who spent a lot of time at the gym, someone who took care of his appearance, someone who probably had no trouble attracting women, especially vulnerable ones looking for excitement or attention or whatever it was that Bridget was looking for. I found articles about his divorce, about the custody battle, about his business success. Local entrepreneur expands auto empire, one headline read. Another, Sebastian's 3rd dealership opens despite personal struggles. He was a public figure in our small town, someone people recognized, someone with money and status and charm. I could see the appeal, I supposed, though it made me feel pathetic to admit. I started my car and drove to Sebastian's biggest dealership, the flagship location on Highway 17. It was impossible to miss, a massive complex of showrooms and service bays, with dozens of new cars gleaming in the lot under the morning sun. His face was on every banner, every sign, every piece of promotional material. Sebastian's Auto Empire, where every customer is royalty. The slogan was everywhere, along with his white-toothed smile and carefully styled hair. The whole place screamed success and money. Luxury cars in the front row, less expensive models toward the back, everything arranged to maximum visual effect. Salespeople in suits moved across the lot, approaching customers, shaking hands, gesturing toward vehicles. It was a well-oiled machine, a testament to Sebastian's business acumen. I parked across the street, where I had a clear view of the main entrance. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, what I expected to find. But I sat there for an hour, watching people come and go, watching salesmen in cheap suits approach customers with clipboards and smiles, watching the whole operation Sebastian had built. I wondered which office was his, which window looked out over his empire. I wondered if Bridget had been here, if they'd met here when they couldn't go to his house. Family-owned and operated, one of the signs proclaimed. What a joke. Did his employees know their boss was sleeping with married women? Do they know what kind of man he really was behind that manufactured smile and those carefully scripted commercials? Or do they see him the way the public did? Successful, charming, a local success story who'd overcome personal adversity? That evening, my wife came home from her actual job at the usual time, around 5:30. I watched from the study as she went through her routine, changing out of her work clothes, putting on jeans and a comfortable sweater, then grabbing her volunteer shirt from a closet. That navy blue polo with the fake animal shelter logo that she must have ordered online or had custom made for her cover story. The attention to detail was remarkable, really. She'd thought of everything. How was your day? I asked, forcing myself to sound normal, casual, just another ordinary evening. Good, she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting her hair. The shelter needs extra help tonight. New intake of dogs from that hoarding case. Did you see it on the news? Some guy in the north part of town had 30 dogs in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's absolutely heartbreaking, the conditions they were living in. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new, interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.